Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So where I live, there are a lot of hills. And sometimes I need to park my car on one of those hills. And my mom taught me to drive when I was 16. And one of the first things that she taught me was how to set the emergency brake when parking on a hill, and then you turn your wheels in towards the curb. And, you have an emergency brake in your car. Some cars you push it with your foot, other cars you pull it up with your right hand. But if you Google emergency brake, what you're going to get is a lot of questions like this. Quote, I forgot to take my emergency brake off and I just drove across town. Did I just ruin my car? End quote. So has that ever happened to you? You park on a hill, your emergency brake is on, and then you forget to take it off, and then you're driving around. Well, I can tell you that it's definitely happened to me. So why am I talking about the emergency brake in your car when this is a podcast for private school leaders? Well, I want to tell you that your body will always pull the emergency brake. And I want to explain what I mean by that. Over the past 2 or 3 years, I've had a total of about 60 coaching clients, and I would say that about 90% of them are dealing with or have dealt with one of these following symptoms. So it could be migraines or back pain or ulcers, vertigo. I have one client that has oral neuropathy, which is also known as burning mouth syndrome. Clients were in the hospital with stroke-like symptoms, an irregular heartbeat, panic attacks, insomnia, burnout, brain fog, and the list goes on. And so those things are the body's way of pulling the emergency brake. So if we're going to try to continue to outwork every problem and continue to do the impossible and then run it back the next day after month after month after year, that the body is going to say stop. And it's sort of like your car, since we're talking about emergency brakes in cars, that if you were to run your car without any oil in it, it'll run for a while, and then all of a sudden it's just going to stop and it'll be on the side of the road. And, this problem of private school leaders that are dealing with some of these physical issues, and I didn't really even get into mental health issues like anxiety and depression, but I think that the number is really high just based on anecdotally my experience with about 90% of my clients dealing with one or more of these issues. And so how big is this problem? Well, it's pretty big, because there's around 35 or 36,000 private schools in America. So let's just say that on average for America, let's say that there's an average of 2 administrators per school. A lot of schools have 1 administrator, but a lot of schools have 2 or more. So let's just say it's 2. So 35,000 private schools, let's say there's 70,000 private school leaders in America. The number is actually probably closer to 100,000. Well, okay, if just anecdotally from what I've experienced with my coaching clients, which is 90%, let's just bump it down to 75%. If 75% of 100,000 private school leaders are dealing with or have recently dealt with one or more of these issues, this is a crisis. This is a huge problem. And so we're not going to just ignore this. We're not going to just say, oh, well, this is part of the job, or we are going to take action, because that's what we do on this podcast. And so in today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, I want to teach you to do these 4 things before your body pulls the emergency brake. And I'm really excited about a new resource that I have created for you. And it kind of is a companion. It goes along really well with what we're talking about today. And it is a free 45-minute video masterclass. And it's called Winning at School Without Losing at Home. And this free video webinar training, and it comes complete with guided notes. It will do exactly what the title says. It will help you feel successful and organized and energized at school while still taking good care of yourself and your family. Now, that might sound too good to be true, but I would love for you to check it out yourself. And so theprivateschoolleader.com/winning is where you can grab your free masterclass training called Winning at School Without Losing at Home. Again, a video webinar with guided notes, free for you, just to say thanks for listening and to give you some, equip you with some tools to help you. And Winning at School Without Losing at Home, that free webinar, you can grab it at theprivateschoolleader.com/winning. And then I also want to remind you about the PSL Pro membership community. And the PSL Pro membership community helps private school leaders go from feeling stressed out, discouraged, and lonely to feeling energized, fulfilled, and supported. And we have a thriving community of school leaders that actually get it, what it's like to be a school leader. They get you, they understand you. And we go live once a week, and that could be in a masterclass or a group coaching session, or twice a month we have the We Get It Roundtable discussion, where it's if you need some encouragement or if you have some encouragement that you can give. It's a lot of real talk there at the We Get It Roundtable with leaders from all over the country. And we have a Q&A session once a month with just questions about anything and everything related to private school leadership. In addition to that, you get your PSL Pro Success Path and unlimited lifetime access to Thrive Academy and just so much more. But really, it's about the connections that are being made with the posting that's happening, with the live meetups, with the encouraging emails that PSL Pro members are sending to each other when they're struggling. And so this, again, kind of goes along with what our subject is for today. But I want you to just take a minute and check out the PSL Pro community at theprivateschoolleader.com/membership. Again, that's theprivateschoolleader.com/membership. So today we're talking about the fact that your body eventually will pull the emergency brake. And I mentioned some of the things that the body does, and I'll revisit those in just a moment in a little more detail. But I want to start talking about why does this happen, give a few examples of what happens, and then most importantly, give you 4 things to do before your body pulls the emergency brake. So let's start with, why does your body do this? Okay. In preparing for this episode, I came across a sentence that I think is super, super important for you to hear. So I want you to listen to this. Your body is designed for survival, not success. So I want to give you that again. Your body is designed for survival, not success. Your body doesn't care about your calendar. Your body doesn't care about your to-do list. Your body doesn't care about whether you're late for a meeting or how well that meeting went. Your body cares about your safety. And we know that our autonomic nervous system, the fight or flight response, is to keep you safe. So again, your body is designed for survival, not success. But we're under this chronic stress, and the stress is so much and for so long that the body is just pumping cortisol into our brain, into our body. All of the fight or flight response, the heart rate goes up and the blood flows to the extremities, and all the things that you learned about, back in middle school health class. And here's the thing. That's super useful when we're running away from a bear. But the fight or flight response was only ever meant to be temporary, long enough for us to get away from the bear, which was a physical threat. But as private school leaders, we aren't necessarily facing physical threats. We're facing psychological and existential threats. But our brain doesn't see the bear. And so we just keep running, and we just keep running. And our body gets flooded with cortisol and adrenaline and inflammation and all of these things that, when they happen over a long period of time, are really, really bad for our bodies. So on the one hand, it makes a lot of sense that, yeah, that's awesome that we have the fight or flight response. But as private school leaders, our bodies don't wait for permission to start doing the fight or flight response. Our bodies just do it. And so when it comes to this continued stress, and the end state of chronic stress is burnout, that's why these problems show up, the problems that I was talking about. And when our fight or flight response leads to these things showing up in our body, it's not a sign of weakness. It's not that we can't handle it or that we're not tough enough. It's just proof that our system, our body, is trying to protect us from something worse, because it doesn't know what else is possibly coming that could possibly be worse, but it just keeps pumping. It just keeps running. And we've got to recognize this and then intentionally do something to try to get that fight or flight response turned off, or it's going to lead to all of these things that we're talking about, and the body's going to pull the emergency brake, and you're going to come to a screeching halt as a person and as a leader. So I think another reason that this happens is because we tend to downplay our own stress as private school leaders. We can handle it. It's no big deal. This is just part of the job. This is, some of us wear it as a badge of honor. I know that I used to. It's sort of like, yeah, I can work 14 hours a day, and, this hustle culture in America that's glamorized. And, I would used to fall into that trap. And so a couple of examples of how we downplay our own stress is, first of all, if we think about the things that we do, and then I've said this before, there's a quote that sometimes we would say at my most recent school, and that is, once you do the impossible, it becomes part of your job description. And I wonder if you've ever felt that way. You do a really good job, you do the impossible, you pull off that event, you handle those 3 student discipline issues, that 1 staff issue, and a couple of other things, and then now it's just expected. So think about your day. You go through your day putting out fires, playing whack-a-mole with your hair on fire. You do the impossible. It becomes part of your job description. You make decisions in private that have very public consequences, and then you have to suffer in silence while people criticize your decision. And if you're listening to this in real time, it's early May, and this is difficult conversation season. A lot of my coaching clients are having conversations with teachers that are not being renewed, or families that they're not able to meet the need of their child, or a student who has to be expelled. Or one of my coaching clients this week had to meet with parents to tell them that their son was not going to go on the senior trip. So making decisions in private that have public consequences and then suffering in silence while people criticize your decision. that was worth reading twice because it has a big impact on us. And then covering classes because you're out of subs, the board meeting that runs 2 hours too long while your kids are waiting up for you, responding to parent emails at 10 p.m., waking up at 4:30 in the morning and you can't stop thinking about that meeting that you have today with that parent that's upset. And then we try to outwork every problem, and we try to smile our way through it and pretend that we're not exhausted. And it's just so much stress. The job is so relentless. And I just want you to think about the cumulative effect of all of the things that I just said. And I don't want to paint a picture of just doom and gloom, because I've said before that being a private school leader, I've never been more exhausted, but I've never felt more fulfilled. And isn't that the paradox that we deal with every single day? It can be a very, very rewarding job, but it also can cause all of these problems. So I touched on them a moment ago, but I want to just take a minute to go through them again. And these are just 10 that I picked. And these are examples of symptoms that manifest themselves in our bodies that are evidence that the body is pulling the emergency brake. So you're going along, you're doing the thing, and everything is fine and blah, 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 and you're just continuing to do all of the stuff, and then all of a sudden you're at the doctor, or all of a sudden you're feeling terrible and you don't know why. So here's just a few. High blood pressure, that chronic cortisol and adrenaline pumping raises blood pressure. And then if it's left unmanaged, it can lead to stroke or heart failure. I have a coaching client who reached out to me the day after she got out of the hospital with stroke-like symptoms. Ulcers. We know that stress increases stomach acid. It wears down the lining of the stomach and it causes ulcers. If you've listened to the podcast, you know that I had 3 ulcers around 2010, 2011 in the lining of my stomach and in my esophagus from stress. I have a coaching client who 2 weeks ago was diagnosed with her first ulcer. Vertigo. That's something that I deal with, stress-induced vertigo. Our inner ear and our brain gets messed up because of stress and inflammation, and also sometimes it's sleep deprivation, and that intersection of those symptoms leads to this debilitating dizziness that some of us deal with called vertigo. And then there's heart palpitations, like an irregular heartbeat. And again, cortisol, adrenaline, too much, our heart's going to respond with an irregular rhythm or skipping beats, or our heart racing all of a sudden. You know, you think your heart's going to pound right out of your chest. I worked with a woman who, when she was really stressed, it would all manifest in her lower back. Lots of lower back pain, but it wasn't from an injury. It wasn't from muscle strain from working out. It was stress. Migraines, tension headaches. Our autoimmune system can also be weakened when we are constantly dealing with the cortisol and the adrenaline. And I've talked about burnout before. Burnout is the end stage of chronic stress. And not only is it depletion and physical exhaustion, but then we feel disconnected and we lose motivation and we lose our joy. And then some private school leaders occasionally have dealt with a panic attack, with insomnia, with not being able to go back to sleep. I probably have 2 or 3 clients right now who are having some major problems with sleep, with waking up and then not being able to go back to sleep because of ruminating thoughts. And then it's also brain fog, because chronic stress impairs the hippocampus, and that affects the brain and memory and decision making. And sometimes you just feel like what's wrong with me? Well, I can tell you what's wrong with you. It's all of these hormones, all of this stress hormone, cortisol. It's the adrenaline, and it was never meant, your fight or flight response was never meant to be engaged for weeks and months. It was meant to be engaged for seconds or minutes. And so all of that's the bad news. But I don't just give you bad news on this podcast. I give you strategies to make this better. And so to wrap up this episode, now we're going to talk about how to do these 4 things before your body pulls the emergency brake. Or if it's already pulled the emergency brake and this is resonating with you and you're thinking back to different things that have happened in your body, then these 4 strategies will help you to get back on track and to help prevent that from happening again. So the 4 things that we're going to do before your body pulls the emergency brake are: number 1, regulate your autonomic nervous system. Number 2, create friction between you and your smartphone. Number 3, pick one boundary and stick to it. And number 4, find a community. Okay, so number 1 is regulate your autonomic nervous system. And most private school leaders were once teachers. And when we were teachers, we were experts at taking dysregulated kids and helping them become regulated. And some of the most amazing things that I've seen from teachers is when they can elegantly, quickly, and calmly take a dysregulated child, and do a few things, say a few things, hand them something, move them to another location in the room, whatever the case might be, while they're still teaching. They don't break stride, and then the child becomes regulated. And we are also experts now as private school leaders of taking dysregulated adults and helping them become regulated. And whether that's the teacher that appears at your door and is all fired up and all upset, or whether it's the parent that's super upset about something that they say happened on the playground or happened during math class. And then we use our skill set to help them become regulated. But here's the thing. You were good at it when you were in the classroom. You're good at it now with other adults. But most of us are pretty lousy when it comes to ourselves and taking ourselves to go from being dysregulated autonomic nervous system to being regulated. And so I'm not going to go into great detail, but I'm going to take good care of you in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 133. I did a couple of episodes, and I have a lot of resources that I will link in the show notes about how to regulate your autonomic nervous system. But just a couple things here. One is drinking water first thing when you wake up in the morning, because and to stay hydrated during the day. I know people sometimes make fun of, I'm 57 and I've drank water out of a garden hose before, and sometimes people make fun of how hydrated kids are and adults and our, Stanley water bottles and whatever. But here's the thing. Dehydration is a wide open door for us becoming dysregulated in our emotions. And so we are also most dehydrated when we wake up in the morning. So drinking water, a lot of water first thing in the morning and throughout the day, to do your breathing, whether it's box breathing, or I give some strategies in the show notes. One is called a physiological sigh, when you take a big deep breath and then right at the top of that breath you just take a little more of a breath in and it fills your lungs almost to capacity. There's a strategy called name it to tame it, and that's when you're feeling anxious and you're not sure why, that you really pause and get curious about, well, why am I anxious? And so I've mentioned this example before. I can remember one time I was in my office and I was feeling anxious, and it was like 2:00 in the afternoon, and I wasn't sure why. And I looked at my calendar and I saw, oh, at 4 p.m. I have to call this kid's mom, and she wants him to be in this math class that he didn't qualify for, that he shouldn't be in. And it's based on past experience, it's going to be a pretty hard phone conversation. And that's why I'm anxious. As soon as I name it, then I tame it, because my fight or flight response knows that I'm anxious. It's not sure why, and it's kind of looking around for the bear, and there's no bear in my office. And so name it to tame it. I'll have that strategy in the show notes as well. And then a decatastrophizing worksheet. You know, when we are dysregulated emotionally, we tend to catastrophize. That, oh no, like this family's going to pull their kids out of the school, and then the board's going to get mad because we're losing those tuition dollars, and then we're not going to have enough money to pay the bills, and then I'm going to get fired, and the school's going to close, and then I'm going to be homeless, and so on and so forth. Our brains catastrophize to keep us safe. It's sort of like, picture that you're running in the woods running away from the bear, and there's 4 paths that you can choose. Well, you're trying to think, your brain is trying to think ahead in the way that is going to keep you most safe. And the way to do that is to analyze worst case scenarios. But our brain just goes there. And so one of the resources is a decatastrophizing worksheet where you answer 4 or 5 questions, and it works wonders for me. It has, and for many of my coaching clients, that the decatastrophizing worksheet has been a game changer. So all of those resources will be there for you in the show notes at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 133. Okay. The second thing we're going to do is to create friction between you and your smartphone. So I really believe, and this is true for me, but it's true for a lot of private school leaders, I would say most, is that the most common portal through which school enters your home is your smartphone. Because I'm old enough to remember life before smartphones and now life after smartphones. And it is so easy to be sitting on the couch watching Netflix, or at the dinner table, or standing in line at the grocery store, or whatever, and to be checking email and responding to email. And I want to give a disclaimer here. I know, especially if you're head of school and the buck stops with you and you're in charge of facilities and transportation and everything, that there are going to be texts and there are going to be phone calls, okay? And of course, there are things that will come through your phone that you need to deal with. But when I'm talking about creating friction between you and your smartphone, one of the big things I'm talking about is it's so easy to check email all the time. During the afternoon, the evening, first thing when you wake up in the morning before you say good morning to the person that you shared a bed with, all of those things. And so we want to create some friction between you and your smartphone, because I don't think that most of us have enough self-discipline to not be looking at it all the time. And so the first friction that I would ask you to create is to turn off notifications. Most importantly, your school email notification. If you're getting, whoever's listening to this now or listening to this years in the future, if there's one thing that I could beg you to please do, that is turn off notifications on your smartphone for your school email. That is the number one thing. And so you can also charge your phone just out of reach. This is something that I had to start doing because I didn't have the self-discipline. And first thing in the morning, before I said good morning to my wife, I would reach over on the nightstand, I would pick up my phone, and I'm laying in bed and I'm checking emails from this parent and this teacher and this. Okay. That's a problem. And so if I don't have the self-discipline, if you don't have the self-discipline, then we need to create friction. And so the friction is that it's just out of reach. You can still hear it if, let's say, you have a teenager or a young adult that is out and about, or, might need you, or you have an elderly parent and something might happen. And I'm not saying that you turn it off or put it in airplane mode. I'm saying that it's just out of reach. And if you have a really hard time staying present when you're sitting on the couch or when you're spending time with the family, having the phone out of reach, just that friction will make a difference, a big difference. I'll give you another example. I know I'm toggling back and forth between talking about your smartphone in general and about your access to your email inbox on your smartphone in particular. But many of my clients, I coach them to move their school email icon 2 swipes. Most of us, when our home screen lights up, we don't have to swipe to get to our school email icon. But if you move it 2 swipes, what I've been hearing from my clients is that within a couple of weeks, they're checking email 80% less often outside of school hours. And if you're at the dinner table, just putting it out of reach, put it over on the counter in the kitchen instead of at the actual table. It's just so easy to pick it up, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And I would just encourage you to start small with one thing. I know I mentioned multiple suggestions, but just start small with one. And then once that one's going well, then go to the next one. And you're just creating more and more friction. As I record this episode, there's a bowl of apples on the table in my kitchen. And the reason that those apples are in a bowl and not in the crisper drawer at the bottom of my fridge is because I want to actually eat the apples. So when I walk through the kitchen, if I'm wanting a snack, I grab an apple, okay? So there's no friction between me and those apples, and so then I'm accessing it. Well, let's flip the script and make it something that's not healthy. If there's a big party size package of Oreos, and I love Oreos, and it's sitting on the kitchen table, I'm going to grab 3 Oreos every time I walk through the kitchen. But I've actually done this in the past. We have a cupboard that we recently cleaned out and threw away some Tupperware that doesn't have a lid. And if I put the Oreos in there and I decide I'm only going to eat 3 Oreos a day, then I was successful in that. And the only difference was I created more friction between me and the Oreos. I want you to create friction between you and your phone. All right. The third thing we're going to do to keep the body from pulling the emergency brake is to pick one boundary and stick to it. So the boundary that I'm talking about, boundaries exist to keep us safe, whether it's a fence or a big yellow line by the subway, or just, don't stand behind this line when, it's a roller coaster, or at the bank or at the post office or at a concert. They've got the stanchions, and that just creates order, and it also keeps us safe. What is the boundary that you're going to pick when it comes to school? I would encourage you that it's your bed and your dinner table. Your bed and your dinner table, that schoolwork doesn't happen there. The boundary could be church. I'll admit it. I've been at church, and I'm pulling up my phone and I'm doing stuff for school. What about when you're driving? Okay, guilty. I do much better with that now. But driving or at an intersection, at a stoplight, so you know where you need to have this boundary. Maybe it's the couch when your family likes to sit together and watch a movie, and there you are on your phone. So I'm not just saying that it's about the phone. I'm saying it's a boundary. Pick a boundary and stick to it. Just one. And then if you're doing great with that after a month, then maybe expand it to a second boundary. I think it's going to be very intuitive and very easy to come to your mind as to where you need to set this boundary, because you've probably gotten feedback from the people in your life that love you. So the third way is going to be to pick one boundary and stick with it. And then finally, the fourth thing we're going to do is that we're going to find a community. So in May of 2023, the United States Surgeon General Vivek Murthy brought the country's attention to a public health crisis characterized by loneliness and lack of connection. So we're in a loneliness crisis in America. We're feeling a huge lack of connection. You know, it started before COVID. COVID exacerbated it tremendously. And then we get social media is supposed to bring us closer together, but it's actually made us more isolated. And not to mention that as a private school leader, you have a job that is one of the more isolating jobs in education or maybe in America, because you can't have friends at school. Like the teachers can't be your friends. Even if you rose up through the ranks at your current school and you were once a teacher and now you're the head of school, it's different. And like I said, we make these decisions in private that have public consequences. And so I said, join a community. And I can hear what you're saying. You're like, yeah, right. We have these jobs that we crave belonging, but our jobs isolate us. I would say one of the common refrains I'm hearing from my coaching clients is how lonely they are. It's so hard to have friends. And even if things are going great at your job, and even if you have a spouse or partner that meets many of your emotional needs, you still have need for community. And I get it. There's obstacles to that. You're already tired. You've used up all your words for the day. Like the last thing that you have time for or have the energy for is engaging with other people that are in community with you. But a couple of suggestions. Church is one. And the challenge with that is sometimes if you're at a religious school, especially if it's connected to a church, that a lot of the parents and board members are at church. That was true for me. All of my board members attended my church when I was the head of school at the Christian school. Another suggestion to find community is at the gym, by taking a class at the gym. Maybe it's a pickleball league. And again, I can hear what you're saying. There's so many obstacles. There's so many things that are somewhat valid reasons why I don't want to do this. I just don't have the energy. Well, I will tell you that one of the things that you can do in your pajamas from your house, on your phone, or on your laptop is the PSL Pro membership. We have live meetups once a week. It's other private school leaders from around the country who are going through the same stuff that you're going through. And when we meet up, the We Get It Roundtable happens twice a month, where you can get some encouragement, you can give some encouragement. It's real talk, it's authentic, it's vulnerable, it's raw. We have a live masterclass once a month. There's group coaching live once a month. Q&A is live once a month. And so 1 hour a week, and you don't have to show up. Like some people show up once a month, twice a month. It's like, it's not going to work out to be there, but you could be part of this community, the PSL pros, and they post in the community and they support each other and they cheer on each other when we have a win of the week. Again, in your pajamas, it's low cost. It's $1 a day. Some of the quotes from the most recent roundtable are, "I see you," quote, "It gets better," quote, "I've been where you are," quote, "That sounds incredibly frustrating," quote, "It just feels so lonely," quote, "How do you keep it together when you're exhausted and hurting?" So again, I'm not going to go on and on about that, but theprivateschoolleader.com/membership is where you can learn more about the PSL Pro membership. But you want to find a community of other people who get it, who are going through the same stuff as you and can encourage you. Find that community, that the PSL Pro membership. You can do it in your pajamas on your phone for $1 a day, theprivateschoolleader.com/membership. So the big takeaways from today's episode, we're going to do these 4 things before your body pulls the emergency brake. Number 1, regulate your autonomic nervous system. Number 2, create friction between you and your smartphone. Number 3, pick one boundary and stick to it. And then number 4, find a community. And your call to action for today's episode is just pick one of these 4 things and do it. Get better at it. Whatever it is, pick one and do it. And then to wrap it up, I just want to remind you again that the thing that it's a free resource that I think really goes along well with today's episode. I want to give you access to a free 45-minute masterclass. It's a video webinar called Winning at School Without Losing at Home. And this training has guided notes, and it will help you to feel more energized and more engaged at school, and also help you be successful in your relationships outside of school. So if that sounds good to you, theprivateschoolleader.com/winning, free 45-minute masterclass video training, theprivateschoolleader.com/winning. And just ask for a quick favor as we wrap up. If you would please share the podcast, the link to the podcast, with another leader in your life or a rising leader at your school. I would truly appreciate that. I want to get this word out to as many people as possible. So please share the link to the podcast. And then one final reminder that the resources from today's episode that I mentioned are at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 133. And I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I just want to say I appreciate you so much and all your hard work for the people that you serve at your school. Thank you so much for taking some of your precious time to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.